All right, what's going on, everybody out there in Cardinals land? Welcome in to the Cards Hub post-game show presented by Hot Shots and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Brenden Schaeffer along with Randy Karraker. Wow, oh wow, Randy, did we just see a fun one at Busch Stadium as the Cardinals erupt late? There were a lot of ways they might have lost this game early, but the offense has the final say, and the Cardinals win it 12-5. Your instant reaction to the Iván Herrera personal home run derby that we just saw.
We've got to start. You started us with only 2 wows. We got to start with 3 wows, don't we? Wow, wow, wow. And those weren't cheapos either. Those were big time home runs. And we've talked about it a lot. Brenden, we knew he was a good hitter, right? We know he's a good hitter. But man, he showed some power that I didn't know he had. He's got light tower power. And I'm thinking during the game as we're watching the first, second, and then the third, because I've been thinking you got to play Pages, you got to play Pages, you got to play the defense. At some point, you've got to get that bat in the lineup, whether it's a catcher or somewhere else. That bat has to play with the Cardinals, and it just gives Oli Marmol more difficult decisions to make. Now, you've got like 10 or 11 bats that you got to get into the lineup rather than just 10 or 9. And so that's interesting. But you know what I thought the coolest thing of the day was Walker gets the infield hit. Scott gets the infield hit. Wynn gets the infield hit. Scott with a bunt. Wynn with a bunt. And that set everything up for the big inning. And the Cardinals not only have speed, but they're utilizing that speed. And I love to see it. I love to see the bunt, and I love to see the athleticism of this team.
I knew there would be people that would enjoy the bunting, and to have 2 of them in a row. There's some video games like MLB The Show, Randy, where I'm not really very good at the game, but I can bunt. And it feels like that's what the Cardinals said. You know what? Mason Wynn, Victor Scott, this is a tool that they have in their bag. Let's use it. Oh, it works once. Let's use it again to really set the table for the rally that ended up ensuing. A little bit of small ball packed with some punch that was brought by Iván Herrera. You really couldn't draw it up much better. And I'm sure the fact that it ended up being a 7-run margin is something that Oliver Marmol didn't mind very much, with the way that the bullpen has been ailing after a few extra inning games. Brian says, guess they were sick of playing extra innings. Yeah, this was one of those cases where, Randy, you could look back in this game and say, okay, the decision to leave Sonny Gray in as long as they did, some of the moves with, okay, who's available out of the bullpen, like this was a tight one before it was busted open late by the Cardinals. And it just kind of goes to show sometimes when you get the big swing, when you get multiple big swings, it can help to cover up some of the things that other times can be perceived as a managerial decision gone wrong. Hitting can cure all, and that's what really saw today.
Yeah, going back to Sonny Gray, I wonder if everything just unraveled so quickly that Maton wasn't ready when they made the first trip to the mound. I kind of thought that was the case. And maybe they should have done more to delay things so that they could get Maton ready, because it sure looked like as things were unfolding that Sonny Gray was in trouble there. Although he wasn't killed, it wasn't like they were they weren't hitting line drives off him. It was kind of like getting bitten to death by ducks until he got to O'Hoppe. But the problem is that O'Hoppe hit the grand slam. But at the time it was unfolding, my first guess was because I didn't know if Maton would be ready because things were happening so fast. I wasn't sure. I was fine with leaving Gray in the game. My guess was wrong, but I was fine with leaving Gray in the game at that time.
I understand why Oliver Marmol does it as well. Like the relationship he has with Sonny Gray, he's going to know first of all, Sonny Gray is going to tell him, right? If it's not a situation where he thinks he can continue and really be effective for his team, Sonny Gray's not been shy about that in the past. And I also think Ollie was a little more inclined to let it play out longer because of a couple of reasons. One, how quickly it started to unfold against Sonny Gray. It happened rapidly. Wilson Contreras kind of had one off of his glove, which is, again, not like he's getting completely wrecked by line drives. That's a play that you maybe like to see made, and it just is a play not made. But I thought, Randy, the 0-2 that hits the lefty in the back foot, where you clearly just didn't mean to make that delivery, that was the spot where I'm like, okay. And that's where Ollie comes out and talks with him, and unfortunately it goes the way that it goes. But I think what we have to respect as well, Randy, is the fact that they have played 2 extra inning games the last 2 days. You're limited. Like Kyle Leahy threw 2 innings yesterday, and he was still your option for the 8th inning at the start of that frame. So, like, that tells you about where the Cardinals were with this one. But at the end of the day, it's interesting after 2 days where everybody's nitpicking all of the little decisions that are made in these close losses. You have a 7-run inning where he goes, oh, this is what it can look like if this Cardinals lineup, they push the rock up to the top of the hill. They finally got it to roll over to the other side of the hill, and that was the key there.
And Brendan, I think the other thing is the response to the Ohapi slam. Both Contreras and Wynn wind up getting their first hits in the next half inning, and the Cardinals wind up bouncing back. And good teams do that. And this team has a little bit more resilience, I think, than maybe last year's team did. And I don't know if that's Brant Brown. I don't know. I know that you would talk to Ollie down the stretch last year, and a lot of the discussions I had with Ollie Marmol down the stretch last year were about hitting approach, and and about just not giving at bats away. And I think last year's team did that a lot. We're not seeing it, and I think there's a lot more resilience and a lot more. I hate to call it mental toughness, but that's what it appears to be. Last year, I think that Ohapi Grand Slam beats the Cardinals. I don't know if they bounce back from that. This year, I think it's a different situation.
It really seemed like it, and it was the case today. And like you mentioned, the fact it was the two guys that had been over the season that immediately come through to help kind of let everybody know we're not out of any game. That's got to be the mantra of the St. Louis Cardinals this season is it might not go well in spots, but we're not out of it because something went against us. And for the two guys that you could say at a certain point, you get 5-6 games into the season, the monkey's on your back. You can feel it. You know that it's there, that you're still looking to break out for that first hit. We know Wilson Contreras is going to be just fine. We know what Mason Wynn is capable of being. But, Randy, for both those guys to see a result, for it to come in a moment that the Cardinals really could have used it to kind of say, hey, chin up, we're in this baseball game. It's a 2-run game. And then next thing you know, it's tied. That is, you never want to overstate something 6 games into a season, but that feels like the kind of moment where you go, all right, if we look back on a Cardinals team that overachieves this year, that moment is indicative of the type of ways that they'll win games.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like this text from Jay Renegade. I wasn't super sold on Jeff Albert, but whatever Brant Brown is doing is 1,000 times better. I think there's a lot to be said. And Turner Ward was a major league player. So I don't know how much water my argument holds here. But I think a guy that played and had to deal with the adversity that Brant Brown had to deal with and has the message that Brant Brown has, I think it makes a difference with this group. And I think, number one, in talking to the players over the years with Jeff Albert, I think they were overloaded with information and they went up to the plate thinking. And it seems pretty simple. It seems like Brown has simplified the approach to these hitters, and they certainly are taking advantage of a simplified approach. But Brendan, one time, Mark McGuire told me, he said, all of your mental preparation should be done when you drive your car through the gate into the garage at the ballpark. Everything else, once you drive through that gate, everything else should be physical. All of your video, all of your preparation about knowing the pitchers, all of your getting your head right should happen at home before you come to the ballpark. And then once you get into the ballpark, it should all be reaction. And I wonder if that's kind of what the approach that Brant Brown has is.
You know, and that sounds so cliche, of, hey, your preparation really matters. You have to get your mind right. The game is whatever percentage mental to go along with the physical. We hear players talk in those terms all the time, but it's unavoidable that it's real, right? Like when you hear enough guys say it, maybe it makes sense to go ahead and believe them. We don't always have a way to visualize what that looks like for every individual player, but that side of the game is so important. And because maybe we don't see it unfold on the field, as fans, as media, as outsiders, we don't always exactly know what it entails. But rest assured, it's important. And I think if you have a team philosophy where everybody's bought into what that looks like, you can really go a long way with that. And again, it's 6 games into the season, but I think we're already seeing the idea that that's something that can kind of carry the Cardinals this year. As this comment mentions here from Jay Renegade, the best part of the season so far is that even the losses have been generally entertaining and well-played games. You could look at the losses they had in this series and still say, you know, those games were there for the taking, and sometimes you lose. Like, it doesn't have to be fire this guy. It doesn't have to be, the sky is falling. Sometimes you lose a baseball game. You play 162 of them, and even the best teams are going to lose 60 to 70. Mm-hmm. It's been 6 games so far, Randy, where I think the Cardinals have put themselves in position to come away with a win, and they've done it 4 of those 6 times, which is, I think there's something to be said for that.
And at least 10 hits in every single game. And before we came into today's game, I thought in the first 5, the Cardinals, we could all legitimately have said that the Cardinals had good starting pitching performances. The final number is not going to look good for Gray today. No. But it was the last swing that got him, right? Yeah. for the most part, no, at the end of the day, people are going to say, no, you're saying Gray was good. No, the line is the line, and you are what your record says you are. But he did have a good performance up until that last pitch that he threw.
And look, his first start was coming off that spring where he didn't pitch well. He was dealing with a little bit of the illness at the end, and it was clear they weren't going to push him too far. So that first start, he doesn't get a quality start. He doesn't go 6 innings. This start, he was so efficient that he's through 6, and you're going, this would be a great day to get you through 7 because of the state of the bullpen. And so they tried to do it. They tried to bite off a little bit more than he was ultimately able to chew. But if he gets taken out after 6, which, again, I would not have advocated for, knowing the situation and the context behind who was unavailable out of that bullpen today from the right side in particular, with a lineup that has a lot of right-handed beneficials for the Cardinals to be facing, it was just a case where you're going to try to get your ace through a 7th inning, and it unraveled pretty quickly on him. But those first 6 innings did matter, and the fact that the Cardinals were able to say, it's all right, Sonny, we're going to pick you up, because as Sonny Gray told us after his first start of the season, I was okay being taken out a little early in that game because it's going to take 26 of us on this roster to win. Today was an example of Sonny tried to carry the extra load, couldn't quite get it there, but several of the other 26 were able to pick him up. Very team-oriented way to win a baseball game, Randy, as we're talking this thing over on the Card Sub post game, brought to you by Hot Shots and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. It was certainly a great one to see, with the Cardinals going 4 for 11 with RISP and ultimately being able to break through. I want to double back a little bit to a topic, Randy, that is, I think it's before today anyway, it felt like the biggest topic surrounding this team that people know about, but they don't really talk as much about. And it's the situation with the catcher position. Iván Herrera can rake. We all know what he can do at the plate. And I would make the case, is he the 3rd best hitter on this team? He's up there for me in terms of just pure hitting ability, what he might be able to bring to the table. But on the other side of that coin, they feel very comfortable with Pedro Pages behind the plate, and there are strides that they have been looking for Herrera to make defensively. And you talked about the 10, maybe 11 guys they're trying to get into the lineup on a daily basis. How difficult is this going to be moving forward for Oliver Marmol when you find yourself in a number of close games early already this season where you're compelled to say, if Herrera's not managing the run game, we might have to go with Pages in this spot, and that takes his bat out of the lineup. And then you see a moment like today where he carries you with 3 home runs, showing that he could be an all-star candidate at the catcher position, but he's also got to be in the lineup. How do you think Ollie Marmol is going to manage this? And I do not envy the position that he's in, because I understand both sides of the coin.
Well, one of the things he did the other night was when he took Herrera out, he brought Pages in because he said Pages manages the running game better. And maybe that's what they have to look at going game to game, series to series, the teams that they play. Against Cincinnati, Pages probably plays. Against a team like Boston coming up, they don't run as well. They aren't as athletic. So maybe Herrera gets some opportunities against the Green Monster in Boston. I think it's probably going to come down to who fits the opposition better. And I think there will be scenarios as well, Brendan, where they'll want Pages to guide a pitcher through a lineup. Herrera apparently doesn't call a game as well as Pages either. That's what we get from some of the pitchers. So a guy like Miles Michaelis, he's going to call his own game, right? So you throw him to Herrera. A guy like Liberatore, who doesn't have as many starts, as much experience as a guy like Miles Michaelis, maybe he needs to be guided through. And I know that Liberatore loves throwing to Pages, but maybe the more inexperienced guys, Palante and Liberatore, maybe they get more of Pages than the other guys do.
And you know what's interesting? I think this came into play yesterday when Liberatore starts that game, but because of the situation and they had to kind of play for runs later on in the game, Herrera ends up as your catcher in that 11th inning, where I'm looking at some of the deliveries from Chris Roycroft, particularly the Kyron Paris hit that ends up going the other way to kind of give the Angels that lead instead of being able to get out of it safely. He had busted him in with 95 and made Paris look silly on a swing. But then that pitch out away 91 that he's able to kind of have more time, extend on it, and slap it the other direction ends up putting the Angels ahead. And then I would say the next batter, Moncada, had a similar situation, the double down the left field line to allow the Angels to score some more runs. Like, I'm not going to pin that on Herrera necessarily, but it's just little spots like that where you go, I wonder if they're maximizing the moment and recognizing, all right, 95 bust Paris in, try that again. You're kind of giving him an out if you go with a different pitch call. And so those are just the little things that I feel as though maybe Pages has an edge in, and certainly in the running game, he threw somebody out yesterday. but it's hard to argue, Randy, with 3 home runs. I mean, this has never happened in the great history of this organization at the catcher position. That man is the first to ever do it, a 3 home run game as a catcher. Iván Herrera today at Busch, and as you said, each home run was further than the last. He was into Big Mac land by the time it was all said and done. Just really an incredible display. So that's why I say there are both angles to this that you could say with this catcher position that I don't envy the job that Ollie Marmol has to do, because you can make a case for why both guys should be getting opportunities. You can make a case for why 2 guys on your bench should be getting regular opportunities. We see Luken Baker playing again today against the lefty as the DH. This is a balancing act that I don't think is going away anytime soon either.
No, if you look at the bench and you look at what Luken Baker is capable of, right? We know he can hit home runs. He had a couple of hits in his first start of the year. So you've got Baker, you've got all of your infielders, and let's put Burleson and Contreras at first. You've got Donovan. Of your 13 position players, is Ciani the only guy now that really isn't a bat?
I think so. I think he's the only guy that you're not really prioritizing for better or worse a daily opportunity for if you can find it. He's going to be in that role that we've seen him in, Randy, where he's a weapon defensively off the bench when you can use him that way. But everybody else you're thinking has displayed enough to be like, there's upside in this bat for sure.
And we should point out that on Sunday, Pages did have 3 hits. It's not like Pages is an automatic out. He's a guy that can also get a hit for you now and then.
Yeah, and I think more of the impetus is to get him in the lineup because of his defense, but it's a fair point that, there are degrees to this where you look at a guy and say, well, he's not really known for his bat, but if he can still be close to a league average hitter, which I don't know if Pages will quite be to that level, there is still a element to this. It's kind of like we talked about with Ciani last year, Randy. If he could have an OPS that started with a 6, I said you put Michael Ciani in that lineup every single day in center because of what he brings you defensively. Now, though, I think you've obviously got a guy that has kind of elevated that conversation with Victor Scott. He could be one of the better hitters on your team. I hate to heap expectations on him, but how impressed have you been with what he's shown through the first week of the season, the varied ways that he can go about it? I still think he's a tick behind Ciani defensively, to be honest with you. I think he's got that Gold Glove caliber potential. You look at the play yesterday in center field where he's shaded a bit to one side, the line drive goes just to the other side and ends up kind of coming back to bite him, and he can't pick it up, fumbles the ball. I think he's going to end up being a Gold Glove caliber fielder. The upside offensively combined with what he already is defensively has put the Cardinals in. I mean, we thought it was a good call to bring him up. It's looking like a no-brainer though right now after a week.
Yeah, I know as of yesterday morning, Scott was the Cardinal 3 outfielders were 2, 3, and 13 in batting average in the National League. Nootbaar was second, Walker was third, and Victor Scott, the second, was 13th, which is pretty remarkable in and of itself. Yeah, I think he's got a chance to be great. He was the minor league Gold Glove center fielder a couple of years ago when he played in multiple levels, and of all the center fielders of all the minor league teams, he was the one that Rawlings picked to win the Gold Glove. So I'm with you there. I think he's capable of being that guy. He's not as polished defensively as Ciani is, but I do think, Brenden, that his offensive upside, especially now that he's got some pop, is significantly greater than Ciani's is with the way that he can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And we saw the speed. I mean, you can hit home runs and you can get infield hits like that. What can't he do offensively?
Yeah, and just as he puts the ball in play more often, it doesn't look overmatched in the way that I think at times he did last year when they had injuries and they had to force him into that spot. But it does look like a completely different scenario right now for Victor Scott II. I want to talk a little bit about one more outfielder who was part of my bold prediction for the season, Randy. But before we do that, we want to tell folks about everything going on with DraftKings. The crown is yours, and this season with DraftKings, you can download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code STL Sports to get a promo. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, better wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. As I take a quick beat here to make sure that, Randy, when it comes to certain things, you know that we've always got to take care of the things that are legal.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Okay, I mentioned I wanted to talk about an outfielder who was part of my bold prediction. And I don't know if we got a chance to talk about this before the season, Randy. I was high on Lars Nootbaar. I thought he was going to have the breakout season, give Cardinals fans the all-star campaign that they've been waiting for. But if that wasn't bold enough, I added another element to my prediction that actually through 6 games is still holding serve. I said he was going to walk more times than he strikes out this year. Right now, he's got a 5-3 lead on that. And I knew that was incredibly bold and unlikely to happen. I went through the list from last year. I believe Juan Soto was really the only guy that did that. But the plate discipline that Lars Nootbaar has shown, the ability to get on base, he's threatening records in terms of getting on base at the clip that he is doing this early in the season with the Cardinals. What has been your impression of his first week, Randy, and the way that he has kind of set the tone for this team as the leadoff man?
Yeah, all of those peripheral numbers that I'm sure that you based your prediction on are finally bearing fruit, and he's an extraordinarily productive player when A, he's in the lineup, and B, he gets a little bit of luck and he hits the ball hard. As you mentioned, he doesn't strike out. He's as great as Burleson is as a bat to ball guy. Nootbaar's probably the best bat to ball guy on this team. And when he hits the ball, he does hit it hard. So I would not be at all surprised. I think that's a really interesting prediction. And I think it's a good one. I'm going to go, I just want to take a quick look here at, because that's what you're talking about is Stan the Man-esque, right? Stan the Man, he walked second to last season, 64 walks, 46 strikeouts, 52 and 35, 41. I believe the only time he struck out more than he walked was in his very last year in the majors. I think every other year of Stan Musial's 22-year career, he walked more than he struck out. So for somebody to do that, though, in 2025 would be absolutely remarkable. And like you say, that's Juan Soto-esque. And Soto and Guerrero and Nootbaar are the 3 guys that were kind of in that conversation, right, with the peripheral numbers that Noot put up last year in limited playing time.
Yeah, and Vlad Guerrero had 70-some-odd walks, but 90-some-odd Ks, so he didn't quite get to that point. Ha-Sung Kim, 58 walks to 77 Ks last year as I look further down the list. Stephen Kwan actually did it, Randy, 53 walks, 51 strikeouts. I think Lars Nootbaar, very similar to the way Stephen Kwan plays, except for you probably expect a little bit more power with the hard hit rate that you get from Nootbaar. So at first I was honestly a little skeptical, Randy, about having him be leadoff, because you're maybe sacrificing a little bit of that doubles and gap power in the home runs he hits. But it's been amazing the way that he has set the tone, and I don't know what you credit that to. You credit to, hey, he's healthy, and for as long as he will be, that's going to be something you see. Or if Brant Brown gets the credit, does Brant Brown get some credit with Jordan Walker, who Mizzou 1755 puts on there, seems to have really grown early on. Look, this lineup 1 through 9, I looked at it before the season, Randy, and said, I don't think there's any truly bad hitters in this lineup. You might have some guys regress from what they've done previously, but there's a lane for a lot of them to end up being above average players. And at least early on, we're seeing that tick up in a number of areas. And the 2 guys that didn't, with Wilson and Wynn up until today having no hits, I feel like are guys that you kind of know what they're going to bring you at the end of the day, which could be even very encouraging for this lineup, I guess is my point.
Yeah, with Nootbaar, I'm with you. I was skeptical of him leading off too. Here's the thing about Lars Nootbaar, though. Tell me if you agree with this. I think he's their best leadoff hitter. I think he's their best number 2 hitter, and I think he's their best number 3 hitter.
You're right.
So you can put him any of those spots. Like if you wanted to move Victor Scott into the leadoff spot, he's hitting 349 with an on base near 400, and then hit Contreras second and Nootbaar third. I think Nootbaar would still be your best number 3 hitter. He would be, if you had Wynn doing what he did last year, hitting leadoff right-handed hitter, and hit Nootbaar second and Contreras third. You would have a really good top 3 in your lineup. Or even if you move him down, the power that he's hit for so far, if you don't have the juice that Contreras and Arenado ordinarily are going to provide, then you could even hit him 4th. But there are so many things that you can do with Lars Nootbaar. And obviously he's comfortable hitting leadoff. And it's working right now with both Wynn, a couple of hits today for his first 2 of the season, and Victor Scott hitting where they are in the lineup too.
And it's guys taking that approach where there really isn't a segment of the lineup where you're going, oh, there's a big chasm here and you're going to strike out a bunch of guys in a row. Like guys are taking tough plate appearances, and to have that little area at number 8, number 9 that they have developed with those 2 young players, we have seen, even as Mason Wynn hasn't started off the season too hot, he's had at-bats where he's forcing counts a little bit deeper. We've seen Victor do that. We've seen Jordan Walker do that, a 9-pitch at-bat leading to a full count home run off the Cardinals kryptonite, Kyle Hendricks, yesterday, I think is indicative, too, of some of the good strides that Jordan Walker has made early on. And flipping it back to that Nootbaar conversation, a guy that I thought is maybe we're still kind of looking for where he's going to fit best into the daily lineup is Brendan Donovan. He's got that on-base skill that maybe would fit better at leadoff. And I wonder if he is in the middle of the order, kind of miscast as a guy that feels compelled to produce more RBIs. I think maybe we make too much of lineup construction at times, but it's fun to do as we talk about these teams on a daily basis. That would have been maybe the one reason I would have said flip Nootbaar and Donovan. But with what Nootbaar has done, I maybe have to kind of give up that take because the tone setting aspect of it has been so critical.
I want to see a guy or two at the top of the lineup that can run. Brendan, my introduction to really good, high quality baseball was Whitey ball. And I think that you can put so much pressure on a defense if your leadoff hitter gets on base and presents the ability and the threat to steal a base. And I think Victor Scott right now, and I think Rick Horton might have said it last night, his speed can outrun anybody, any catcher in the National League. And I would love to be able to see them put that kind of pressure on an opposing team's run defense with Scott at the top. I like Donovan up there too, but if I have Victor Scott on my team, I want to see what happens when he gets on base to lead off a game.
Yeah, and I think you're going to probably see that eventually, Randy. It's just a matter of when you look at last year at both AAA and MLB, Victor Scott had a 5-some-odd OPS, right? Like he wasn't producing offensively the way that we all knew as he made his way through the ranks he was going to. The fact that he came into spring this year the way that he did and kind of took it on himself to be that guy and to show the Cardinals that you can't ignore me for long. I think the last step in that iteration for him is just, can he become the guy who does it consistently for long enough where they say, yeah, we want that at the leadoff position, because he's already impacted the game by stealing bases. And when you lead off a game and you get on base, you know there's nobody on in front of you. So there's going to be additional opportunities, I think, for him to do that. That's something that probably comes down the line. Something else I want to ask about, Randy, maybe it comes down the line as well as we talk things over on the Card Sub post game, presented by Hot Shots and powered by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Newt is such a good character. If, and this is a big if, he has a totally healthy season, he has a high ceiling. This comment made me think about what's going on around the game today with Christian Campbell signing a new extension with the Red Sox. There are players that are getting those early contracts. It feels like right now, with the front office in transition from a John Mozeliak-led unit to a Heimblum-led unit after the season, that's all kind of on pause. But I look at Lars Nootbaar and say, if he has that breakout season now, Randy, you're probably, if you're interested in signing him and extending him in the offseason, the price has gone up. And then it's going to start to get a little bit interesting as he delves deeper into arbitration. What's your opinion on that? The young Cardinals talents that we say, hey, these guys are kind of looking like building blocks. Would you like to see the Cardinals be a little more proactive like we saw kind of in the Paul DeYoung, Colton Wong era, Alan Craig, even another example? Not all of them pan out, but that used to be a strategy for the Cardinals that we've kind of seen wane in recent years.
I think they need to do that with a lot of their youngsters. I really like the model that the Braves gave us with signing Austin Riley and Michael Harris II and Acuna and Albies and both catchers when they signed Sean Murphy and d'Arnaud when they had signed him, and then signing their young pitchers. Max Fried went to the Yankees. He's 31 years old. He came off a very team-friendly contract with Atlanta. I would love to see the Cardinals. When I saw the contract for Jackson Merrill this morning, the first thing I thought of was Mason Wynn. And Mason Wynn, I know he didn't have a hit until today. Mason Wynn's a really good player, and he's going to be a really good player. And the price is only going to go up. And when you look at what Bobby Witt Jr. got from the Royals, I don't know that Wynn's going to be a $350 million player, but I would want to get him under contract. I want to get Newt under contract. I would sign Quinn Matthews. We were talking about this morning on Matrix Midwest. Would you do like 7 years and $80 million for Quinn Matthews right now?
I probably wouldn't, just because of knowing pitcher injuries can happen to anybody. He seems, though, Randy, like if you're going to do it with anybody, he's the guy who throws 156 pitches in a game for Stanford in the College World Series path. Like the durability there seems to be strong with him, and I absolutely understand where you're going from. But I think they've got the actuaries and the guys on staff that can say, here's what a reasonable contract would be. Let's float that to Quinn Matthews. Let's float that to JJ Weatherholt. And I don't know that the Cardinals are doing those things right now. I'll assign it to the lack of revenue, uncertainty with TV, and then the fact that you're changing front offices. This is kind of that holding pattern. But I agree with you. If you're going to be a team that's going to develop from within and talk about use free agency to supplement rather than to be the mainstay of the way you build a roster, you also have to make sure that core is stable for the long haul. And if you trust the guys that you've drafted and developed, there's a number of guys right now on both position player and pitching sides, Randy, that I think it's a compelling case.
And Chaim Bloom did sign Devers to his contract in Boston. So Bloom is not averse to doing that. And it's going to be a pay me now or pay me later type situation. When these players, if these players live up to what the Cardinals expect them to be, would you rather sign a guy for an AAV of 12 or 13 million now, or wait until after their fifth year and have that AAV go up to 25, 26, 27 million dollars? I think that's a choice the Cardinals have to make. And like you said, historically, they have signed their young guys. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But this looks to be a group with a ton of ability and a chance to be really good. So if I were in the Cardinals' shoes, I think I would be inclined, even with, as you mentioned, the financial constraints that they're dealing with now. They have to be confident. They have to think about the fact that 5 years down the road, they're going to be able to get revenue back, whether it's Rob Manfred having a national TV deal and fans coming back, or the national TV deal and the local TV deals combined, giving them enough money to work with. But I think they have to work ahead, because if you work behind now, you're going to lose the guys in this market. If you're the St. Louis Cardinals and you've got all these guys and you don't sign them to long-term contracts, once their contracts are up, they're going to the Dodgers or the Yankees.
And think about the names we're talking about, too. We're talking about Lars Nootbaar. We're talking about Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker. I would put Brendan Donovan in that conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of his game. And then I'm okay with talking J.J. Weatherholt. I'm okay with talking Quinn Matthews as guys come up through the ranks. Other teams think ahead and are doing those things. I think you're talking about a lot of players that have a floor to them. I don't think the bottom drops out of any of the players we just named, kind of like Alan Craig happened to him after he got injured. I think there's a safety net aspect of this, Randy, where you look at the Christian Campbell deal with the Red Sox today. He's played a handful of games for them, just got called up, and he gets that contract and that certainty. It's not like you're front loading a ton of that money. He got a couple million bonus, $1 million this year, $2 million next year, $3 million. And even the money that's on the back end is like $16, $18 million a year. It's not prohibitive for players that I think you've got a very stable floor of what they're going to be. And Randy, what if some of those guys turn into ceiling type of players and you have bought out a few of their free agent years and you don't have to fuss with arbitration? Fans hate hearing about arbitration every year because it's the perception that the teams are not doing right by their players, true or untrue. I think you could do a lot of favor with the fan base that you're kind of looking for reasons to get him back bought in after today, another lowest attendance record at Busch. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to happen right now because of you can use the transition of front office as a reason. But I also look at some of these guys and say it might be too late by the time Chaim Bloom takes over next year.
And I think we do need to, as fans, look at the fact that there were 9 arbitration cases in baseball this year. 3 of them were Cardinals. And you just don't have so I can give you an example of something that I heard about. They told Brendan Donovan, for example, that they really liked, they told him, you're going to be a more valuable player if you're a utility player. If you can play multiple positions and you can move around the diamond, you're going to be a more valuable player. Then they get to arbitration, and from what I understand, the Cardinals said, well, he's just a utility player. So you're going to make players unhappy. We know Helsley was unhappy with the process. We know Tyler O'Neill was unhappy with the process. And Donovan, there's too many examples of players being unhappy with the arbitration process for me to believe that it wouldn't be more beneficial for the Cardinals to have these guys under contract and have more of a partnership with the team rather than an adversarial relationship.
Yeah, and it's easy to say, oh, it's just a business. Guys don't take it to heart. But the more times it happens, you get deeper into this process and the closer to free agency you are, you're going to be more inclined to go, this has been a bit of a headache that I didn't really appreciate. And Brendan Donovan, I feel like, handled that so professionally, Randy. He talked to us in spring and said, I'm not going to really get into too many of the details, but I will say that I had been, kind of told that there were some things that I thought were a plus to my game that were kind of used against me. And he left it at that. And you can kind of put the dots together as we talk about. I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying there. And to the point that Spencer was asking about today's attendance, just to make sure everybody's aware of it, it was down to 20,309. And again, that's paid attendance, not butts in seats. But that paid attendance is lower than what we saw the last 2 nights, which, the first night of this series as it was, you set the record. So if you're trying to endear yourself to your players and your fans, Randy, and again, I get it. There's financial implications that from my home, I don't understand, and I'm not part of the organization. But looking at it from the outside in, you really do see the impetus that I think could be beneficial there for the Cardinals to maybe take that approach, as you've said.
Yeah, but Hulk Hogan's T-shirt, yeah, that's working it for the Braves. Now, it isn't with all of the re-signings. Well, yeah, you're not going to hit 100%, but the fact of the matter is the Braves did get a world championship out of it, which is pretty good.
Those are nice.
And
like
that, I think we would all love to have that group of players that Atlanta is going to have for a pretty substantial amount of time. And that's my point is, yeah, you aren't going to hit on all of them. I mean, we talked about what the Cardinals have done, right? They gave Carlos Martinez, Alan Craig, Colton Wong, Paul DeYoung, Matt Carpenter. They gave all of those guys long-term contracts well before they could become free agents. They didn't all work out. But if you're an organization that wants to pay maybe $100 million rather than $300 million for a player, it's a sensible move to make.
I think that's 100% spot on. We'll end it with this. Slim Pickens getting us back to the basics here. It was a nice win today for the Cardinals. Avoid the sweep. I sent the tweet over the weekend. The Cardinals sweep the Twins. I've done this for several years, Randy, where the adage, sweeps are hard. I say, hey, sweeps aren't that hard. Just play the Twins in that instance. That's who the Cardinals beat. And then I got a tweet this afternoon from somebody saying, hey, Brendan, you got the tweet ready after Sonny gave up the Ohapi Slam? And I said, oh, no. I don't want to have to send it on the other direction. I don't want to have to put the Cardinals in that box too early in the season. But ultimately, they get the win today. Sweeps are indeed hard. The Angels couldn't get one. And so you're 4-2. You're still in the lead in the Central, right, Randy? Life can't be much better than that.
And here's my thing. If they go 4-2 every 6 games they play and play 667 ball, I'll take my chances.
I think you're going to be doing just fine if that ends up being the case. All right, this has been Cards Hub Postgame presented by
the way, I'm in Creve Coeur, and I've got tornado warning sirens going off.
All right, so hey, everybody get healthy. Everybody get safe in the basement with the weather going on. Cards Hub Postgame presented by Hot Shots and powered by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Thank you, Randy. We will talk to you with more content every single day on Sports Hub STL. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, be careful out there. See ya.